Welcome to EVERNIGHT by Ross Mackenzie. We're going to read together chapter 28. It's called The Weeping Isles Fall. 4 days sailing from the mainland of the Silver Kingdom, away to the east, lay the Weeping Isles, 5 mounds of jutting grey rock, covered for the most part in dense redwood forest. The Weeping Islanders lived in towns and villages scattered along the coastline of the islands. They were a fishing people, and they were as upright and sturdy and tough as the redwood trees that provided them with the wood for their ships. As Lara was having her troubles far away in King's Haven, the Weeping Islanders faced a danger of their own. When the afternoon sky turned suddenly to night, they gathered in the streets and stared up at the infinite stars in wonderment and confusion and fear. Families held each other in the streets, mothers and fathers keeping their children close, and the children laughed in innocent delight. "Look, Mamma! Stars! So many! How come it's dark, Papa? Is it time for bed?" At first, when the stars began to go out, the spectacle was met with only hushed silence. But when the last star disappeared and the moon faded to nothingness, leaving a gaping, endless black hole above the world, the panic began. And the first anybody knew about the intruders was when they walked into the streets, wrapped in animal skins, and drew their bows. Agatha Alphonston was on the main street with her son when the Painted came around the corner. Agatha knew that the Silver Kingdom had once been many different countries, before the great Argent army had rolled over the world, backed by the magic of the White Witches, and claimed everything in the name of the king. Each of these countries had had their own cultures, religions, gods. But whatever their differences, a single story was common in every tongue. The tale of an ancient darkness in the east. The EVERNIGHT. Agatha started awake from her daze. She looked down at her little boy, Joshua, who was tugging at her dress. "Mamma! Mamma!" Agatha swept him up in her arms, and she turned and ran up the hill to the family's cottage. She went to the stove, unlocked the cupboard, and brought out her hunting bow and quiver. She slung her bow over her shoulder and went back to the door. When she opened it, there was a Painted only a few steps away. Agatha did not hesitate. She drew her bow, aimed, and loosened the arrow. The shot was true. She knew as much as it left the bow. It hit the Painted in the heart, if he had a heart, but he only looked down and wrenched the arrow from his chest. Agatha scooped her wide-eyed little boy into her arms, and she ran up the dark street, round the winding hill, through screams and yells, clangs of metal, and the firing of pistols. The coppers had arrived, but there were not so many on the island, and their guns seemed to be as useless against the Painted as her arrows. There was a stone wall bordering the edge of town, and beyond that a small grassy meadow, and then the forest. Agatha held her son tight in her arms as she ran. When she reached the border of the forest, Agatha put down her son, and she stared into his large blue eyes. She kissed him and held him tight, breathing in the scent of him. "Now, you listen," she said, wiping the tears from her eyes. "Be a good boy. Run through the forest to the next village, to Aunt Rebecca. You remember the way? Good. Tell her that I sent you, and that you need to leave. She'll look after you." "Mama, I want to go with you." An arrow ploughed into the nearest tree. "I'll be there soon enough," she told him, running a hand through his blonde hair. "I promise. Go now. Go." "Mama!" She pushed him away into the trees, her heart cracking in two. His big eyes glistened in the dark for a moment, and then he turned and ran. A twig snapped nearby. Agatha spun and found herself face to face with one of the Painted. A minute later, when she had been marked, and when the searing pain was gone, Agatha was not Agatha any more. She was no one. She had no past, no family, and the only thought in her mind was the EVERNIGHT, and that she must give her life to protect it.